Welcome back, everyone. It's a pleasure to have Michael Primrose back on our podcast today. You might remember him from a previous episode on market updates back in April. Now, today we're going to dive into the different aspects of property investing. So we're going to explore various ways to fund investment properties. And Michael, thank you again for joining us.
Pleasure.
We're going to start off with, how do lenders assess your credit worthiness as a borrower? What are the steps that you can kind of take as an investor to improve your chances of securing that finance?
Yeah, so it depends on your strategy. I mean, if you're looking at getting into developments, things like that, then actually your creditworthiness wouldn't really come into it, because a lot of it is asset-based finance, and they're more interested in the deal than they are you. And also development lenders kind of have a much more optimistic view on clients as well. They'll look at it and say, oh, you've got a couple of missed payments. Okay, that's understandable. You're doing developments. You missed a bit here, missed a bit there. It didn't really matter. When it comes to the bridging side of things, again, they have a very similar look, but they do tend to employ a slightly closer to buy to let model, in that they will look at things like bank statements, your credit file, etc., and they'll be looking for, have there been huge volumes of missed payments, that kind of thing. So in terms of making sure that you're kind of as investable as possible, the first one I would always say is, in terms of missed payments, I mean, it's never good to have missed payments, don't get me wrong. But if they're on unsecured things, so credit cards, bank loans, overdrafts, that kind of thing, they're not as serious. When they start going into secured arrears, so mortgages being the main one, that's when you start to really drop down the rankings in terms of who's going to want to lend to you. Because as soon as you start missing payments on mortgages, it just puts you into that different category of risk. So I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, when it comes to missed payments, always make sure that the mortgage is up to date. And that's mortgages on buy-to-lets, residential homes, all of that kind of thing. Just make sure they're always up to date, because you really don't want to risk falling into that negative category. Outside of that, really just about trying to keep as clean a profile as possible. A lot of the stuff we deal with, because it's unregulated, it is more asset-based than it is sort of client-based. So we don't get a huge amount of questions about credit issues, really. We've got one at the moment where, I mean, the client's got a hell of a lot of missed payments. But even still, the lenders are willing to talk about it. The difference between that and a resi mortgage is, on a resi mortgage, if you had a couple of missed payments, a box somewhere gets ticked and a computer somewhere says that you're not worthy to borrow that money. Whereas within the industry we're in, it's very much, you talk to I mean, I took yesterday, for example, talking to an underwriter for an hour and 7 minutes about one case. And it's just on the phone, talking through everything and trying to come up with a solution and a story and everything else. And that's all they want in the bridging development commercial mortgage side of things. It's just a story. They want to understand, why did you miss those payments? Why have you got bad credit here, there, etc.? And if there's a story that they can twist to credit, then they'll take it. So yeah, it's all about, the deal is way more important when it comes to bridging and development, making sure the deal stacks up, making sure the deal is squeaky clean. After that, it's just a case of making sure that you as a person are as good with your credit as you can be. But we'll have blips on our credit files, and I haven't met anyone that I'm aware of yet who's got a completely squeaky clean credit file. It's just doesn't exist. I mean, even at 999, you've still probably got some blips somewhere. So yeah, it's one of those things where you're never going to be squeaky clean. You're never going to be perfect, but it's just about making sure that there's a story there to tell.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's interesting, because a lot of people think they have to have 100% squeaky clean, or that they need to be 999 on their credit scores, because that's really important. That the reality is, lenders do have a very broad view, and if the deal stacks and is good, they're more open to options, should I say, more open to different pathways, which is nice. Because some of our listeners sat here thinking, oh, I haven't got 999, or oh God, I've missed, in COVID, I missed loads of payments because I lost my job, or whatever it might be, and has an impact into, they think, do I dare go into it because of that? So it's nice to hear that It's not.
Yeah, we've had people who have had missed payments. We've got people who have got defaults. We've had people who've had IVAs, bankruptcies, CCJs, insolvencies. The way I always described it is no one is unfinanceable. There are projects that are unfinanceable, but there is no one who's unfinanceable. It's just a case of if your credit is really bad, you're just going to have to pay a higher interest rate than someone who's got a really good credit file. That being said, obviously, if you've got 27 insolvencies and bankruptcies and God knows how many CCJs, and obviously it starts to get a bit difficult.
Yeah.
But if you've got some even slightly large blips on the credit file, there's no one I've met in 7 years that we haven't been able to finance because of personal circumstances.
Yeah. That's good, because I think people see it as an obstacle often in getting into property.
Yeah.
What are some of the common challenges or obstacles that borrowers are facing at the moment when applying for finance?
I would say the first one is the profit in deals because of rising build costs, because of slowing sales and everything else. I think realistically, that's probably the biggest thing at the minute is those tightening margins. So it comes back to what we said a moment ago, the people aren't unfinanceable, deals are unfinanceable. And I think that is the biggest stumbling block at the moment, is trying to squeeze whatever you can out of a deal just to get those margins to work. And I think the problem is there's, because of all these rising costs and everything else, and because of QS being more pessimistic, valuers being more pessimistic, it doesn't help that process. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that people are having. Outside of that, there aren't really any major stumbling blocks at the moment. Lenders are lending. There are projects out there if you can find them. Yeah, there aren't really any major ones. I would say it's just those squeezing margins, which, to be fair, is still quite a big stumbling block, but it's the only one that we're really coming across at the minute, as opposed to back in COVID days where lenders stopped lending or interest rates went so high you couldn't get the deals to work anymore. Now we're just limited to these rising costs. And actually, even though some costs are rising, there are a lot of these costs that are falling, and we've got stuff that we're working on personally where we're building out at sort of 105 to 120 pound a square foot, which is well below what QS's ever thought we could build at. But we've done it and we've achieved it, and kind of it does give me great joy to do the QS and go, we're building out this figure that you said we couldn't do. But they enjoy it to a certain degree. They do like being proved wrong, not in a arsehole way, but they do like being proven wrong now and again, because for them, I guess it gives them confidence as well that the market's coming back a bit. But yeah, it does give me great joy sometimes just to show off a bit. But it's one of those where we couldn't get it to work by going down the normal contractor route. We were getting quoted 150, 160 pound a square foot over in Lincolnshire, which, I mean, anywhere outside of Lincolnshire would have been probably 180 pound, 190 pound a square foot, I would have thought. And the QS was coming back and saying, oh, well, even at 160 pound a square foot, it's quite tight. So we went to the lender and we said, well, look, at 160 pound a square foot, where we've got a main contractor in place, we can't get this deal to work. And then I spoke to a couple of people who I know and who run, God help us all, but run courses on project management and being a contractor. And I had a really long conversation and I said, well, okay, but can we do this ourselves? And he said, well, yeah, actually, this is all you need, and kind of gave me a bit of a list. And I've got a couple of QSs who I get on very well with, and went to them and said, okay, well, can you kind of help out with procurement and things like that? And sort of dabbling in and around people around me, we've managed to now, build out at sort of 105 to 120 pounds a square foot. And the reason I say 105 to 120 pounds a square foot is because the 105 is just for essentially your, best way of describing it. So I'm not a builder. So despite the fact that we're acting like builders, I'm not a builder. So I forget all the terminology, but the 120 pound a square foot is everything all in. That's all our landscaping utilities, everything. Essentially, yeah. Whereas 105 is for just our structures, really doesn't include any money in there for landscape or anything like that. So it was only recently that I learned that sort of with the QSs and things, they like to have these two separate cost columns, and they want to know, well, okay, what are you working out on this? What are you working out on that? It's just been a good learning curve as well. And it does come in handy when clients come to you and want to talk about development finance, that you actually boots on the ground doing this stuff as well. And it also gives me something to share on Instagram as well, which is always nice.
I think that's what makes you different to a lot of brokers out there. They're not actually doing it. They're not living and breathing and doing projects themselves. And that can be quite a challenge, because if they've never actually lived through what that project or what a project can feel like, and the different outcomes and the reality of it, I think that can often sway a broker in sometimes in their view in a certain project or a certain way of presenting a project. So I think your additional experience in actually having your boots on the ground is a really good asset to have.
It does help, definitely. It's very unique to have. Definitely, there's other brokers that are doing refurb and things like that and whatnot, and they do still have that same experience. But it's very different. I find sometimes when someone comes and you say, "Oh, I'm having this problem," and you go, "Funnily enough, I've just had exactly the same problem.
Yeah,
I've just had exactly the same thing." Like copyright with, I never ever came across this. Copyright on planning permission drawings. Never ever come across it. Within the space of 6 weeks, we had the issue ourselves on a site. A client had an issue on a site, and then someone else I was speaking to had the same issue as well. I've never come across this in 7 years, and all of a sudden, within 6 weeks, 3 people all having the same issue, where the copyright had ended up stuck with the architect, and it hadn't. The point of purchasing the site, you should take that copyright over. For whatever reason, the solicitor hadn't done that. It got missed or whatever had happened, but it stayed with the architect. So then all of a sudden, I mean, it cost us 10 grand to get the architect to sign over the copyright. And I know people have been charged a hell of a lot more than that, but a very, very expensive lesson, one which we did put onto the solicitor a little bit. But yeah, it was just completely missed, and it was a real problem for us and for clients as well.
we had that with Wickham when we were building out Wickham. We were going through buying it, and it was raised by our sister at the time, and the seller was like, "Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, we've got the copyright. I've got the copyright to sell it." Yeah. So belt and braces, we went back to the architect and said, "Hey, look, can you send us through the structural calculations, please? Because they're not on the drawings that you've completed." He was like, "I don't know who you are." And we're like, "Oh, we're the new buyers. We're buying it." I said, "Well, you can't. I'm sorry, no. We're not sharing that information with you." And I said, "Well, you've obviously shared it with the seller, and the seller's selling it to us, so he's got the copyright." And he was like, "No, he hasn't got the copyright. They're still ours." And he hadn't actually finished paying his bill either, which made it even worse. So in the end, we had to pay £5,000 to them to release it. And when they released it, what they released wasn't even correct. We had to put our own structural engineer on site to be able to go out, because the roof structure was completely wrong.
Mad, doesn't it?
So it is amazing the things that get thrown up. And you know, that was a new one on me. You know, I've been doing it for 6 years, and that was a new one on me. I was like, wow, I just assumed it went with the seller, but no, it doesn't.
It's an assumption that I'd always made as well. And to be fair, it never come up on a transaction before. And then to have it 3 times in 6 weeks. I mean, it's great because it does then put it on your radar for every single deal that you're then looking at to go, well, have we got the copyright? Have we genuinely got the copyright? Yeah, a really, really bizarre. Just like came completely out of the blue. Never, ever had an issue with it before.
No. And it is, like you said, it's important to, especially to the listeners, because they might not have come across this, and it might be something they face in the future. I'm interested, we're coming towards the end of the podcast now, but what kind of podcasts do you listen to, or books have you read recently that, you think readers might find interesting?
So I'll tell you the one that I've listened to a couple, and people are going to go, I'll tell you what, I'll pull my Audible up, because there's a few, and I have found one in particular, everyone's going to go, what are you on about? That's not the right kind of book.
I've read something by Sarah Poynton Ryan more recently called Money Mechanics.
Oh, yes, her Money Mechanics, yes, which is on my list to read. So I used to work with Sarah quite a bit and went to bits and pieces that she did in Milton Keynes. And yeah, she's a phenomenally intelligent lady.
Yeah, very much so.
So yeah, she definitely on my list to read. But this one, so people are going to think, what's that got to do with property or anything like that? Before and Laughter by Jimmy Carr. And people are going to think that's bizarre. Why would you want to listen to that? But Jimmy Carr is probably one of the most intelligent men I think I've ever listened to. And he is an incredible comedian, and he is a crass knob at times. Very, very good with his taxes. But the book is phenomenal. He is been through a lot of stuff in his life, and he's very business minded as well, which he does give a lot of advice within that. And I'd also recommend listening to his episode on Diary of a CEO as well. That was very, very good. I'd also recommend listening to Michael Bublé's one as well. And these aren't your regular property mindset books that people listen to. I mean, if you want.
Oh, I think it's lovely. It's good because a lot of listeners, especially on a property podcast, they get pointed towards lots of property.
Oh, they do.
And I'm like you. I like looking at different, like reading and learning different things outside of property. Sometimes it's nice to get a different.
Jimmy Carr's two in particular, his Diary of a CEO and his Before and After, very, very good. If you want business related ones, This Is Marketing by Seth Godin. That's quite a good one. Everyone listens to The One Thing. That's on there as well. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. That was very, very good. I enjoyed that. I've listened to that quite a few times. A Funny Life by Michael McIntyre. That was, again, another one that was very good.
You listen to quite a lot of comedians.
I do, yeah, because I tell you what, if anyone's going to give you an unbiased view on life, it's going to be a comedian. And they've got nothing to sell either.
Yes.
Because in the nicest way, a lot of the guys you talk to, I mean, even Diary of a CEO, it is a funnel. You are in a funnel to his cards or buying fuel or God knows what else. And then the other ones, it's a high performance podcast, is always very good. That's Jake Humphrey's one. I'd like to see, I have no idea, Hazy, which ones you've listened to.
Well, that's given the listeners quite a few.
That's given people a few, yeah. Diary of a CEO is
different ideas, I think, which is quite nice. And it's given me a few different ideas. So
yeah,
that's definitely something. Jimmy Carr is definitely one that I wouldn't have considered. So I will make a point of downloading it.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy his book first. I'd have a listen to his Diary of a CEO one first, because it's free. And that'll give you a good feel for how he thinks. And yeah, I've listened to that a few times and then bought his book and listened to that. And yeah, very, very similar. But he's very much just give it a go and don't worry about it. The worst thing you can do is fail. You just try again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so that's a wrap for today's episode. A huge thank you to you, Michael Primrose, for sharing your expertise on property finance with us again. Remember, for me and for everyone else listening, understanding the nuances of financing is crucial, especially for a property investor in any type of investment that you're doing. So I think these podcasts definitely help open their eyes to different areas of finance and what potentially they could be exposed to and the things that they may not have come across already. So stay tuned. If you're not subscribed already, please do hit that subscribe button. And we're going to be sharing a lot more sort of insightful discussions in our next up and coming episodes of The Female Property Expert. And until next time, happy investing.